From the racing capital of the world, Indianapolis, Indiana, welcome to Season 6, Episode number 2 of the greatest spectacle in podcasting, the Seventh Gear Over Show, presented to you by our great friends at Respect Your Package and Dick Carriers, the makers of high-end ultra-premium men's underwear, as well as Kraus Meats, the best in handcrafted artisan small batch sausages anywhere in the United States. As per usual, I am your host, Kevin Kraus, alongside my good friend and co host, the James Bond of podcasting, the one and only Mr. John McGrath. And holy shitballs, kids, have we got a lot to talk about this week, especially given that the F1 season opener is just around the corner and we just had the big F1 livery reveal. John, what do you think, man? There's so much cool stuff coming out that we're already excited about the season.
Yeah, the season's pretty much already kicked off with that event that happened in London where they, for the first time, the FIA and Formula One has shown all of the cars instead of a individual sort of presentation that the other teams used to do. They used to just have their own little YouTube deal or maybe Twitter or however they did it, whatever social platform they chose. They decided to make it a giant show for the fans, especially for those who were lucky enough to be in London to attend the festivities. It was pretty neat. I watched a few things of it. Very centric to the European audience. There was some personalities there who I didn't know, but that's fine. It's basically a European centric sport anyway, so not much we can do about that. But there were some good dry jokes along the way. But of course, the main thing was the reveal of all the cars.
And it's crazy to think that just seeing it was literally an event, like you said. It was almost a gala, and it was refreshing. But I kind of, I'd gotten used to the individual teams, one by one doing their reveals and scheduling them and being able to really hone that in. But I guess all the social media teams made that work on their own. But why don't we dive right in, man, and let's just go from top to bottom here and talk
Yeah,
about what we think
absolutely.
about these cars. So
Yeah.
let's start off with
Well,
Alpine. I think they're starting off right there, huh?
yeah, I think with the Alpine cars, I really like the color scheme they have. It seems to be that pink and blue really work for that body. Not as much exposed carbon. There's a lot of exposed carbon, of course, because they're trying to save weight. But I like how like you have the A on the back cowling there with the pink background and that really pretty blue color. Kind of reminds me of my car that I just got. Kind of has the same color, but it really is you know what? I want to say it's probably out of all of them that were presented, I think this one might be my favorite next to Aston's, which we'll get to next.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I just feel like they're. I hate to say this, but I feel like Alpine's kind of putting lipstick on a pig because that car does look gorgeous, and I love that
Yeah.
BWT has been involved in as a primary sponsor in F1 for a long time. But that car does look gorgeous, and I agree
It
with
does
you
look
that
great.
the A for the Alpine logo over the back of the engine cover, and it seemed to me as I was looking comparing that to the other cars in the field, obviously that they all revealed, it almost seemed like the body on that car, it just looked a little bit sexier, like they had something a little bit different. But I don't know that Alpine's really been able to do a whole lot of development to close the gap between the haves and the haves not have nots. But from a aesthetic standpoint, yeah, I'm a fan. I'm grooving on the Alpine for
I
sure.
really like it. But yeah, so that's what I like. I think with you when you're talking about the body, I think it's that blue. Something about that blue and how it hits the body and the shading and the lighting really. I think it kind of amplifies the lines of the car.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt, no doubt. So I guess we'll see, how between Gasly and Doohan, the rookie coming in. I
Yeah,
think Gasly,
yeah,
yeah, I mean Gasly's a talented guy. Obviously, Doohan is too, but we'll see, if Alpine's got anything for the rest of the
yeah.
field this year. So,
Right. And
all
so
right,
I had
from
mentioned I had
there,
mentioned Aston earlier. Yeah, let's take a look at Aston's here, and it's pretty much the same. Not a whole lot different from last couple of seasons, but it still looks good. The British Racing Green always looks phenomenal, especially with Aston's sort of hallmark highlighter yellow that they kind of accent everything with. A lot of exposed carbon on this one. Again, weight, but it looks good. It always has looked good. I don't think we'll ever see an ugly Aston paint job at this point.
well, I mean, anytime you've got that Aston Martin green and you kind of have those throwbacks to 007, especially when you've got a dude like Fernando Alonso in the number one seat there, I think you can't go wrong. Now, I know John, I had mentioned to you before we came on air, and Seventh Gear Over fans, if you've heard anything about this, please feel free to let us know on our social medias or in the comments below here, since we're on YouTube with this show. Did anybody else hear that British Racing green that they're using on the current Aston Martin was a heavier paint than most other manufacturers or car builders were putting on their cars, and so they had to, make some adjustments there in terms of weight saving. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I thought I had read that somewhere.
it it's an interesting thought if it's true because it generally goes against what you've always heard how the amount of paint used in the car is the lightest amount they could possibly use, and they try to use different panels that are still remained just bare carbon essentially. But I don't know, I hadn't heard anything if they're using a heavier paint. Maybe the heavier paint just looks better. I'm not quite sure.
Well, and maybe with some of the new rules changes, with the heavier cars. I mean, it's only a couple of kilograms heavier. Maybe they don't have to make as many adjustments, from weight savings due to the paint weight. But who knows? I think the bigger issue is there going to be any material change in the development of the Aston Martin? Now that Adrian Newey's been involved, since the off season, but we still got Fernando and Lance Stroll, and I think Lance Stroll is still kind of the weakest link, not only in that team, but probably in the
Now there's
whole
no
of
kind of
F1.
there.
So,
There's no kind of, he
yeah,
is.
yeah,
But
you
he's
are
got a
the
permanent
weakest
job.
link.
So, all right.
Well,
So,
yeah, until he
moving
decides to go commit himself to tennis, I guess.
right. So now we move on to Ferrari, which interesting. A lot of the HP has taken over with Hewlett Packard as the main sponsor of the car. Went a little bit dark on the red. It's not Rosa Corsa. I don't know the name of this version of the red, but obviously red because of Ferrari. But it does have that a little bit of a kickback, like back to the Marlboro days a little bit when it had the white accent. That's kind of what it reminds me of with the HP going back down against the rear engine cover and along the wing, and even on the front wing there you see the HP right there. It's prominent as the main sponsor, but you do see the undercarriage of the car there. If you can see right underneath the side pods, that's all bare carbon. But I actually personally, there's some people were complaining about this. I personally like it. I like it a lot, actually. I think it looks good. I think the darker red is also kind of makes the logos and everything else, like the Shell logo and all the white logo sponsorship. I think it makes everything pop.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think the only kind of issue I have with that livery, and I like the white accents on the front and the rear wing. I just kind of feel like that big white band over the rear engine cover is probably a little bit bigger than it needed to be. And it really,
Mm,
just from an eye standpoint, I guess if you're the media or if you're a fan, it makes it easier to pick the car out. But for me, it's like I could have done with a little bit less, or maybe even move it rearward a little bit more like Alpine did, and
yeah.
work it that way. But I'd also heard some rumors that sort of was reminiscent of one of those specialty paint one-off jobs that they did last season. So we'll see.
Yeah,
But
could be. Yeah,
again,
yeah.
it's always going to be. But now it'll be interesting to see what happens now that Lewis Hamilton's in the building.
Yeah, that's what everybody's. Let's face it, that's what everybody's waiting for is the whole Lewis thing to start up. That's the main thing.
And
So
I gotta say, I think as strong as McLaren and Red Bull intend to be, I think Lewis may have gotten a little bit of a second win late in his career here, and I could see Ferrari being a serious contender. I guess it's partially going to depend, obviously, on the strategy that Vasseur and how well he and Leclerc play together, but I could see them
yeah,
being a real challenger for the championship this year.
I fully agree. All right, so moving on. Now we have Haas, the other half of the Ferrari world that's going on there, but Ferrari engines in those. And I quite like this. They have a more red accent. They not nearly as much as bare carbon as they had last year. They really went all out with the white. I think this is a pretty good looking car, especially like on the top of the side pods there. You have that sort of 90-degree triangular look to it there with the red striping or that, yeah, I think it all looks really great. I think it's probably I gotta say it's probably my number three as far as favorites go. I think I like this the most, or for number three. What do you think?
I agree with you. I think of all the Haas cars, since they came into F1, however many years ago that was now, this is probably the most attractive livery that they've produced. And
I agree.
interestingly, again, just another side note relative to the team, I had heard that actually Ferrari was finally starting to copy some of Haas's development work onto their car after all this time. So
It's
that's
interesting.
kind of an interesting thing. But now, what I think is going to be really even more so interesting, especially once we get to the season opener here, is how Ocon and the rookie Behrman are going to fare together. So that'll be, gone are our friends, Hulkenberg and K-Mag, to
Yeah,
give us sound bites and that sort of thing. So we'll see what happens with the rookie and the vet there down at Haas.
absolutely. Absolutely. Now we have probably one of the biggest tragedies from last year, Kick Sauber. But I do like the car. I like the color. I think it's neat. I like how the green fades into the carbon. It's a little plain, but I don't imagine they have a whole lot of money to throw around as far as making a really fancy livery goes. But you definitely can see the car from a million miles away. You definitely know which team it is when you see them out there on track.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I mean, it's largely similar to what we've seen from, Steak Kick Sauber, in the past. It'll be part of the part, I guess the part of that logo or that livery that I like is like the green from the nose up, almost like they sort of dipped it in the green, which is okay. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of green cars, but that gives it a little bit of a distinctive look. And yes, it will be clearly visible. Um, but the fact of the matter remains is, are they going to be better than near the back of the grid with Hulkenberg? I mean, what does Hulkenberg stand to gain out of this? I mean, Valtteri couldn't do a whole lot with that car last year, and now you got him paired up with a rookie Bartoletto. Um, it'll be interesting. Q1, 2, and 3 is going to be a fun watch, especially early in the season as they're getting their feet beneath them.
Yeah, I think we'll see them very plainly when they're in the back. I hate to be mean, but that's kind of what we know about Kick Sauber. All right, so
Right.
moving on to McLaren. Now, McLaren, they went a little bit more carbon exposed this year, but I like how they sort of patterned everything out. I like the future techie look of all the sponsorship, like with the numbers of the car. Of course, it's papaya orange. I think it looks really good. I'm not offended by it at all. You still have the Google hubcaps on the for the wheel covers there, which has always looked funky on TV. But I really actually do like this. I wish there was a bit more papaya, a little bit more on the side pods there, but they have a ton of it on the nose and leading up to the cockpit. But yeah, I think it looks pretty decent.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I mean, it's kind of funny to me. We joked about this last season at what a master of bringing in commercial relationships and partnerships and sponsorships to McLaren Zach Brown has become, and that car is literally littered with it. Even on the IndyCar side, which we'll talk about in another episode, he brought in so many partners, they actually had to work with another team to get those sponsors the exposure because he ran out of real estate on the car itself. My only drawback on that McLaren, and you highlighted it, John, is those damn Google hubcaps. I could seriously do without
Yeah,
them, but I get
yeah,
it.
yeah.
But Jesus, do something. Can we
Yeah.
put the Google thing somewhere else? Anywhere.
I
Anywhere
feel like
else.
it's like like those little pinwheels you saw at carnivals. That's just what it looks like to
Seriously.
me. It kind of looks ridiculous,
It's like,
but
yeah,
I
give me that and some
they do
cotton
that
candy and maybe a corn dog.
right, but they do that like when you use Google, you see that little logo spin. So that's
I know.
I get it. It's on brand, and that's what they want. And well, Google
I
pays a lot of
know.
money for those hubcaps. So
Well, you a-holes.
next up
All right.
is
All right.
next up is
Yeah.
the silver
Let's.
arrows of the Mercedes, and it looks good. Of course, you have the Petronas green, the silver. They incorporated more silver this time, which I'm very happy about. I do like a cool black car, but I do really like how this. I've always been a fan of this color of the Petronas green with the silver and black. I think it all works very well. It's a tasteful use of the color because you can go crazy with the Petronas green and it looks awful. I've seen other cars, like other Petronas cars sponsored with it, and they go kind of heavier on it. It doesn't look good. But when you use it lightly like this with the silver, with the black, I think it looks really great. And of course, you have those really cool on the engine cover, the all of the Mercedes stars on there, the silver that fades into the black. I think it's a
Mhm.
great looking car. It's really pretty.
Yeah, and that's you said it exactly, John. My favorite part of that livery is the fade to black over the the air inlet on the engine cover to the the Mercedes three-pointed star. The fade
Yeah.
to black, that use of the silver. It's obviously this similar evolution of what we've seen from paint schemes in them in the past, or liveries, if you want to call it. It'd be appropriate, I guess. But yeah, overall, it's a great looking car. But again,
Abs-
let's see what happens with another rookie in the series. Kimi Antonelli paired with Georgie boy, and what happens when they start to go elbows out with Max and pushing back and that kind of thing. But we'll
I,
see.
I,
We'll
I,
see what
I,
Mercedes has got in store.
yeah, I feel like it's going to be definitely where it's going to be. He's going to know his place and just let George go. That's going to be the end of it. So, all right,
Right.
moving
Be the
on.
dutiful teammate and learn.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Moving on to things uh, are interesting over at Racing Bulls Visa. I'm not sure I like this at all. I just think it looks like a clown car. I don't like the white with the blue and the red and the yellow. The Red Bulls kind of coming out over from the engine cowl. It's kind of neat, but I genuinely don't like this car's scheme. I don't like it at all. I don't know. What do you think, Kevin?
Well, I mean, I agree with you in that there's so many colors that it does look a little bit like, how many clowns can you shove into a Volkswagen Beetle sort of a deal.
Right? Yeah, yeah,
However, I do like how the blue towards the rear of the engine cover and the rear suspension, kind of blends to that from the sort of speckled, for lack of a better term, to the solid blue there.
yeah.
And it is distinctive. Certainly they've got to highlight the Red Bull logo, and Visa certainly takes its prominent spot along with Cash App just above it. But it's I don't mind it. I mean, it's not my favorite livery, but I don't mind it.
All right. Well, you're wrong, but anyway.
Right there.
Yeah, we're still cutthroat here at the show, folks. Anyways, but let's move on to Red Bull Racing and look at all the differences that aren't there. Good God, I mean, I get it. There are some iconic patterns out there, right? Martini, golf, all those. I think Red Bull is trying to make this livery that level by just kind of like keeping shoving it down our throats. It's like it looks nice. I have nothing against it, but they don't change anything. And it's no fun to me. It's like, listen, I know it's a serious business, even though it's a sport, but good lord, just something. Do something else. That's all I ask. I don't know. That's just me. What about you, Kevin? What do you think? Do you think this
See,
is
to me, this is literally the most unimaginative livery in the entire F1 paddock. It's
yes,
almost like
yes.
the entire commercial team and social media team at Red Bull just got lazy, and they said, "Let's just run it back again and see if it works," because everybody already knows us. They know Max. It's going to be what it's going to be, and they've got Liam Lawson in the team, but it's like, again, this to me is the most unimaginative livery in the entire field.
Control C, Control V on Photoshop every time for the
Seriously.
last 4 or 5 years,
It's
even
like,
longer. I think.
are you just like harassing your interns and they just don't want to do anything? Are they all working from
Maybe.
home? What the hell?
Uh, and let's just we'll get into the next. We'll get into Williams here, which is the last set we're looking at. But let's touch upon something that happened here. With sorry, JD, I'm hopping into. We'll hop into that just a second. But I'm sorry, folks. I'm kind of getting a little ahead of the game. I apologize. It's my fault. But did you hear of the booze and the reception Red Bull got when they were presenting the car with Christian Horner?
I did hear about that, and I heard that
Yeah.
Mr. Verstappen was none too pleased and basically saying that he's not coming back. It's
Yeah,
like,
I guess
really?
now with the reception that they're receiving, they're saying that it's all because of Max and they're booing Max, but they also booed Christian Horner, who's also from Britain. So I don't understand why they think it's a British thing because I think it's just dislike of Christian Horner and Max. And yes,
And the
Joe
most
said
unimaginative livery in the entire field.
maybe that's what it was. They saw that livery and they're like, no, change something. But yeah, I guess now the
Seriously.
word is going around that Max is never going to attend another British event again.
F
Okay,
that guy.
so
F that
ah,
guy.
whatever. It's all right. Anyway, all right,
This is
JD.
part
Sorry
of
about
what you
that.
get
Let's
paid for, Max.
yeah, let's go ahead and head into the Williams car. This is our last car we got to look at, and it's simple. Not a whole lot going on. The Duracell logo thing is kind of neat with the air intake. It's always been kind of a cool thing. Uh, but I like it. I like that color blue. I like how things are just kept simple with the nice white stripe. Again, nothing groundbreaking, nothing crazy. They do have a new sponsor with Altacian, or I think that's how you spell it. And I did look them up. They are a software company out in Australia. So no weird or kind of strange F1 sponsorships as we've seen in the past. But no, I like the way it looks. I think again, I like the white stripe that separates out the carbon with the blue. I think it's a very nice color blue. Again, simple. Not much can be said about it, but it's Williams. They don't have the big funding to go put some crazy paint job on a car, right?
You know, I'm really glad that this Williams car is sort of like the last on our list of livery kind of reviews for the season because as much as Williams has sort of been, F1's punching bag in many a year now, I'm actually I'm actually kind of excited for Williams. This Atlassian sponsorship that they brought in, this title partnership, apparently is the largest commercial deal in the history of Williams, from what I've read.
That's
And
correct.
that, to your point, John, it is a software company, and you see throughout the F1 paddock, whether it's HP or the Google and everybody that's involved in the technology, Dell Technologies on McLaren, to help automate and modernize all of these production capabilities and testing and simulations and that sort of thing. This is a huge step forward for Williams, and James Voles had even said it. Our production methods have been outdated for years and they've struggled to keep up. I mean, think about just last year how they struggled to have a car ready for testing, let alone after Logan Sargent crashed as much as he did to actually put a car back together and have it ready for the next race.
Right.
So now you've got him and you've got Albon paired with Sainz, and I still feel like Sainz is kind of effed himself on that move when he maybe could have held out for a little bit better seat. But I'm actually surprisingly optimistic about Williams, and I hope that they can actually take a substantive step forward and relegate the likes of Steak Kick Sauber to the back and see something happen. Have Sainz actually racing for something other than his own career, and then having I think Albon's a solid teammate, so I think that could be actually pretty interesting to watch this year. So I'm excited
Yeah,
for those guys and good for them for landing that deal.
and I have, like I said before the season ended, I feel like with signs coming on, I feel like they have a far better chance than people are giving them credit for. I know that the cars production side of things has been a struggle for them, and I understand all this. But again, I think with the combination of Signs and Albon, I think they're going to be way better than people think they're going to be. And at least I hope so.
Well, and think about this too. This procurement of this Atlassian title sponsorship that's a multi-year deal going into the last season before the new car and the new regs come out next year couldn't have come at a better time. So
Sure.
while I think we're going to see, I mean, I don't expect to see Williams competing, with the likes of even whether it's Ferrari or even Aston Martin, for that sort of middle spot on the constructors championship in the grid. I do expect to see them take a step forward, and I think that they're poised very well for a bigger step in 2026 because of that
Okay.
funding.
All right. Well, that's
So
all of
hopefully.
the looks. Yeah, that's all the look at all of the liveries. Kevin, do you have any final thoughts on what we saw?
Well, I think the biggest thing here is going to be, we're 2 weeks out effectively from the season opener in Australia, maybe three at the most. I think it's the 14th, the weekend of March 14th. So I guess we're 3 weeks out, and they're finishing up preseason testing now. Obviously, that's all to be taken with a grain of salt because, not everybody's going to show everything they've got, kind of like when you go to the Roar before the 24 here at Daytona. So we'll see how many of those pretty new liveries go unscathed once we get to, the season opener in Australia in a few weeks. But I can tell you, like you, John, I know you're going to be watching it. I know a lot of our listeners and viewers are going to be watching it. But the seventh gear over fans, please, in the comments below, let us know what you think about our assessment of the liveries and what you like and what you don't like, and hit us up. Let us know, and maybe you've got some predictions for not only Australia but for the entire 2025 F1 season. Like, yeah, who's thinking Piastri's going to take it? Is it going to be Lando? Is it going to be Lewis making the step forward there at Ferrari? Who knows? I think it'll be an entertaining season, maybe more so than in the past. Now that Max is not the preeminent number one, that's far and away better than everybody else.
So my
All
prediction,
right.
I'm gonna come out and say my prediction is that this upcoming season will be the best we've seen in a very long time.
Wow, that's really going out on a limb there, John.
I don't care. I
I
don't
think it's
care.
going to be very, very entertaining. I think Max is going to have to drive a little bit harder than he has before. I think there's going to be a few more guys that are going to go elbows out. Whether that's, his competitors, whether it's a George or if it's a Lewis or if it's, anybody around him. I think it's going to be a little bit more elbows out. And I think we may, potentially see a side of Max that's just going to make us love to hate him because he's not one to take things lightly. And especially when his dad Yoss is in, Christian's ear and Dieter Matischitz's ear and those guys. I think you're right. I think we're going to see a good competitive F1 season this year. But I still think, my money's on McLaren to take the championship. And quite frankly, I'm not sure if it's going to be Lando or Oscar. So, it'll be
I think it's
interesting
gonna
to
be
see.
Lando.
I guess
I,
that's
I
why
I
we
agree with
watch, right?
I agree with the construction side. I think it's gonna be Lando though. I really do.
My leanings are Lando, because he kind of had to make some concessions there during the course of the season based on team orders, with Oscar. But Oscar's got a full season under him. They both completed virtually every freaking lap of every race, so they've got a
Yep,
lot of seat time, a lot of experience. But that's why we watch, right?
that's right.
So I guess in a few weeks' time we'll have a show talking about that. But in the meantime, Seventh Gear Overrev fans, if you like this new format of us being on YouTube and all of the resources that we've got, obviously the on-air talent with John, I'm just the voice that looks voice for television kind of a thing, right? It doesn't really work. And our man JD behind the mics and manipulating all the bells and whistles and switches and stuff. So let us know what you like, what you don't like, any ideas for future shows. Hit the like button, share us with your friends, subscribe, right? Down below. I'm sure JD will get that in there. Just hit that subscribe button. And again, we are working our best to give you weekly content here from this point forward throughout the season through a myriad of series, whether it's F1, IndyCar, sports cars, you name it. We're going to try to cover it, maybe even some on location sort of things and some live streams. But in the meantime, folks, make sure that you check out our good friends and sponsors over at Respect Your Package with Dick Carriers, those ultra premium high end men's underwear, as well as go to their website and you can put in the discount code RESPECT7, which is the number 7, for your 20% discount off of your order, not to be combined with any other sales. But also go ahead and check out krausemeats.com as we get closer and closer to grilling season for your favorite and your handcrafted artisan sausages and meats, everything from bratwurst to summer sausage and kielbasa's, you name it. Go to krausemeats.com and check them out. We do shipping worldwide. So with that said, folks, you've been listening to Seventh Gear Over Rev, the greatest spectacle in podcasting. Thank you, John. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, JD. We'll see you next week.